Welcome to the Naked Truth
Uncut.
with yours truly, Miss Mo.
And it's your boy King Leo.
Here is where we will share our experiences with life, heartache, pain, suffering, sorrow, defeat, and loss. Not only will we expose our darkness, but we will introduce to you the light through our faith in the God that overruled it all.
Praying peace possess my soul, cause I've been seeking and running looking for you. It's your light in the darkness seeing me through. Said I've been seeking and running looking for you. It's your light in the darkness seeing me through. I need a savior. I'm tired of running. What should I do? What should I do?
What up again? It's your boy King Leo, and we are back with another episode of The Naked Truth Uncut. Today we're going to be talking on the topic of, are you really over it? How are you, Miss Mo?
I am blessed and highly favored. Thank you for asking. And how are you?
I'm good. I can't complain. God is good. Life is good. And I just feel blessed, every time that we get to sit here and record these podcasts, these episodes, and to really, put our truth out there, to live in our purpose and live in the calling that God has placed on our life. It's a blessing, you know what I mean, to just have the opportunity to do that. So I'm just grateful because not everybody has that opportunity, or not everyone is taking advantage of the opportunity that God has given us. So I'm just grateful that we can constantly, just enjoy it and just be grateful.
Amen.
So, are you really over it? This topic is so important to life itself, and for everyone listening, this can go in so many ways. A lot of us, we have gone through things in our lives, be it abuse, be it hurt, pain, whatever it is that you have gone through, breakups, whatever it is, losing your job or losing family members, whatever it is. A lot of times in life, we like to constantly tell ourselves that we are over something. We like to, in a way, hype ourselves up to make ourselves think that I'm good. You know what I mean? And that's over. That's in the past. Now I have moved on. When in the reality, when the reality of it all is that a lot of times we're still stuck in these places, and we are not as over these places as we claim to be. So we need to learn to stop trying to psych ourselves out to making ourselves think that we're actually fine and that we are okay. And we have to allow ourselves to literally deal with these things or places or situations or whatever it is, and allow ourselves to genuinely move on from these places.
You're right, because a lot of times we are stuck in the madness, and we're stuck and we're trapped in places and people and things, and especially in experiences, because a lot of times, you're right, we'll tell ourselves that we are over this and that because we may no longer be in the same place, or we may not be around the same people, but that does not mean that everything that we experience, that we are over it. And it takes time to getting over things, but I think we waste a lot of times over things that we don't really want to end or call it quits or get over. And I'm reminded of, for years, over 30 years, I wasn't over the pain and suffering, the abuse, the molestations, the rapes, the anger, the frustration, not having my mother's love, not having my father's love. I even had to come to a conclusion a year or so ago when we were living in LA for 7 months. And I knew that at that time my dad had word that I was there, and my dad lives in Long Beach. And I really, I will go to Sam's Club in Long Beach. I will go to Walmart in Long Beach. I will go to certain places in Long Beach because I was hoping and praying that I would just see my dad at a red light or at a stop sign or just run into him in Walmart or anything, because I wasn't over the fact that it had been so many years between the last time that he and I had spoken with each other or to each other. And I really thought at that time that not only was I in LA on an assignment, but I thought that I will be there to reconcile with my dad. And as I was approaching my ending time there and getting ready to return back to Georgia, I literally found myself sitting up one night and crying because I literally thought that I would get to see my dad and spend time with my dad. And when I realized that wasn't the plan, and it wasn't in God's plan, and no matter how much I wanted it to happen, it didn't happen. And so in that moment, I had to make a decision, and I had to choose in that moment that I will no longer allow myself to be burdened or to be hurt or to have expectations of hoping for me and my dad to be in each other's lives when at that moment it wasn't meant. And so I had to allow myself to mourn those expectations, and that I had to allow myself to embrace and accept what didn't happen, and also give myself permission to get over it and to accept that me and my dad may not ever have the opportunity to sit down and he be able to express what he's done in the relationship between he and I won't be able to express how it made me feel and what it made me think about my relationship at that time with my dad, meaning that we didn't get a chance. And if it's God's will down the line, we may have that opportunity, but then again, we may not. And I have to be okay with that. And so I made peace before I came back home to Georgia. I made peace with knowing that it was not in the plan that me going to LA, that I will have an opportunity to meet up with my dad. And so I had to say to myself, this is something that you've been carrying for years, and it's time for you to make a decision to either stay stuck in it and constantly trying to figure out ways to make it happen and constantly having the door closed in your face, or the spirit of rejection and abandonment torturing you, or you're going to have to make a decision to get over it. Because it's not like I've had my dad in my life for years. There were episodes that he was there. There were episodes that things just didn't work out between my dad. And even when my dad sexually assaulted me, I still wanted to have a relationship with him. I still wanted to forgive him, and I still wanted to get past those moments. But I had to realize that just because I am open for forgiveness and open to receiving and accepting him in my life, God has other plans. And that when we think that is meant for us to keep chasing down relationships and chasing for the sake of it's my father or my mother, my sister or my brother, we are only hurting ourselves when we don't give ourselves permission to let go, get over it, and get past it. And I know me moving forward in my heart that I have nothing against my dad. I forgive him. I've already forgave him and I love him, but I am at peace and I am okay with the fact that this is how it's meant to be right now. So I'm over, excuse me, but I'm over it. And I appreciate God giving me the strength and the power to choosing what's best for me.
Amen.
And not having to feel guilty and bad and horrible about letting it go.
Yeah, you said something that actually brings me to my next question as to what's keeping us attached to the things, places, or people that we should actually be over. And one of the main things, as you stated, is expectations. A lot of times we place these expectations on situations or people or on these relationships, or we feed into false hope, you know what I mean, a lot of times. And this is what's actually keeping us stuck, as I would say, because we're expecting things to change. We're expecting people to show up. We're expecting a different outcome. As you brought up, God's plan or God's will. We have these wills and these plans and these goals of our, that we come up with ourselves. And the best thing that we can do is to realize, as you stated, that God plan, it always trumps our plan. You know what I mean? And whatever God has ordained, in our lives and over our lives, is going to always win, when it comes to us trying to, again, meet these expectations that we set, or, try to bring life to these false expectations and hopes, I would say. Another thing is comfort. You know what I mean? The reason why a lot of times we stay attached to, as I stated, people, places, or things, is because we've allowed ourselves to get comfortable in these places. We've allowed these places to become home for us. That when God calls us from these places, or when we find ourselves no longer in these places, we don't know how to readjust to life. We don't know how to move forward, with being okay. We don't know how to move forward without thinking about the memories or, the things that we've experienced, be it with a person or a place or a thing or a situation, a relationship, whatever it may be. So comfort is another thing. Another thing I would say is fear of not finding something better than what we're actually walking away from is what also keeps us, stuck and attached to certain places, people, and things. But one thing we have to know, and I'm a firm believer of this, is that when God calls us from one situation to another, the situation that he is calling us from can't even amount to the situation that he's calling us to. You know what I mean? It can't even top what he's getting ready to do in our lives. So if God is calling you from a place, if God is calling you from a situation, if God is calling you from a person or a relationship, I challenge you to trust him, and to trust that whatever he is calling you to is far better than what he has just called you from. The third thing I would say is that the fear of being alone. And we talked about this before, but no one wants to be alone. No one wants to do life for no amount of time by themselves. You know what I mean? And so this is why we in a way lie to ourselves, or we create these, as I said, these false expectations, and we buy into this false hope that things will get better or things will change, or the outcome will be different this time. You know what I mean? Because again, we don't want to be alone. And last but not least, the fear of what people might think or say. We're so afraid of hurting people's feelings. We're so afraid that people will go off on us, or that they'll call us all types of names, or that they'll say all types of wrong things about us. But we can't let someone else's emotions or feelings stop us from moving on, from choosing our better. You know what I mean? From choosing to disconnect from dysfunction. We can't allow that. You know what I mean? Because if we constantly judge our forwardness off of what someone might say or what someone might think, then we'll constantly stay stuck, and we'll constantly live in the past. You know what I mean? And won't ever be able to go forward. But what do you think are some of the things beyond what I just said are reasons as to why people stay attached to certain things, or if you want to expound on what I just said?
Well, as I stated before, is that when I was a little girl, before my mother took us away from our dad, because she and I both walked in on my dad having sex with his niece. And before that day, I was very close to my dad. I was a daddy's girl. I loved my dad. And so, although I was young and I really didn't understand the impact of what had happened that day, and my mother taking me from him, and I'm not able to see him anymore, my heart bled and cried for my dad. And I wanted my dad in my life. And I will cry and ask God that I hope. And there were moments as a little girl that my dad popped in, and it wasn't that many moments that he popped in, but he will pop in and pop out and never show up again. And so it wasn't until after I graduated from high school and I told my mother that I wanted to leave home, and my mother beat me from my bedroom to the back door, and I ran out of the house and ran to the other end of the projects, where this amazing woman at this time allowed me to come in and be at her house with her and her children. And my brother ended up finding my dad in that moment. And my dad, I didn't even get to speak to my dad on the phone, but he immediately sent me a bus ticket, a Greyhound bus ticket, to come to Long Beach, California. And I remember when I saw my dad at that time, he and I look identical. At that time, I looked at him, I touched his face. I said, "You got the same lips, the same eyes." At that moment, at that time, we did look just alike to me. Because even when we went into the store, one of his favorite stores that we used to go to, the man didn't even see me come in with my dad. But as he saw me standing alone looking at the lunch meat, he said, "You look just like this man that come in here all the time. You look like you could be his daughter." And my dad walked up and said, "She is my daughter." And I thought, and seeing my dad again, I thought that it would have healed so much pain that I was suffering upon my arrival to Long Beach, that he and that I will finally be rescued and be at peace. But not long after that, I found myself, I fought my stepmother, I really thought to take her out. I fought my dad. I ran up his phone bill. I was angry. I was envious of my sister because she had everything and I didn't have anything. And I suffered and I struggled. And I wanted my dad to understand that I needed him in my life. And the moment that my mother took me from him, I literally went to hell. I was molested. I was abused. It was just so much going on in my life after leaving my dad. And so I thought at that time that my dad and I will have this amazing relationship because at times I felt it, but then I started to feel my daddy wanting me in a wrong kind of way. And before I left Long Beach, my dad had stuck his tongue down my throat, chased me around the house. I locked myself in a bathroom with a butcher knife, and I told him that if he kicked in that door, that I promised that I would cut off his genitals and put it in his mouth because no one was going to molest, rape, or violate me again. And so when I left, because I took my dad's money, his money orders, and I left Long Beach and went back to Detroit. And a couple of years later, my dad and I reconnected. But when my dad reconnected with me, he acted as if he never did anything wrong. It had even hurt me to my core that my stepmother thought that you was my dad's son. And
Oh, wow.
and I
never
felt
knew that.
so bad because I kept trying to tell her that you're not my dad. My dad didn't get to have sex with me. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so even after that, I tried to build a relationship with my dad, and he and I will be on the phone laughing. And he's a very funny guy, make jokes, and we will laugh. And I would tell him I love him, and he would say, "You're the only one of my children that really love me." But I just wanted my dad to say he was sorry, but he was in denial, and he lied and told me I didn't stick. And two of my friends at that time was standing right there when he did it. And he told me that he was sorry. He thought I was his wife. And I know that you didn't think that I was your wife because you were talking to me as my dad and I was talking to you as your daughter. And it broke my heart, but I still wanted my dad in my life. And so that taught me as I continue to go on in life that I was attracted and attached and addicted to dysfunction because that's what my parents gave me. Even when my sister and I were in the 7th and 8th grade going to Spain middle school, my mother would be so angry walking all the way from the Brewster Projects to the Jeffries. The wind will blow our hair out of place. My mother swore up and down that we were having sex. She will slap us around, make us go upstairs, take off all of our clothes, me and my oldest sister, and she would dig in our vaginas and dig and call us all kinds of names and tell us that we are whores and that we're sluts and that we're this, and we will be crying, telling we didn't have sex, nobody touched us. And I always felt like my mother was doing that out of her own evil mind, that she had another agenda, why she felt that it was right for her to constantly go in my vagina when she knew that we were so afraid to even talk to a boy because we knew that we would be beaten. You see what I'm saying? And so God had to even teach me in that moment, even when I was in LA, God had to let me know, I'm not going to let you continue to want people that don't want you or allow you to okay dysfunction and to allow yourself to be attached to something just for the sake of saying, I got my daddy in my life. Because my daddy may have gotten over me, but the little girl Monique still wanted her daddy. Because her life was interrupted by a fault of his own, which I'm not going to condemn and judge and hate my dad,
Right.
because I know that we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And I know that my dad has his own issues and problems, and who am I to try to condemn? And that's why I say this podcast is not to attack the people that attacked me, but it's to change and to show that you can have a different perspective about your pain, about your past, about your experiences, about your pain, about your suffering. And I still wanted that relationship with my dad. And God was saying, no, because just because I am growing and changing and healing does not mean that my dad is on the same page. And so I will have to come down. I will have to compromise and settle and sacrifice who I am becoming so that I can have a seat in his life and he have one in mine.
All right.
At one time, I even contacted one of my cousins on Facebook and asked him when he went to visit my dad, could he give my dad my number and tell him that I love him and I figure I don't have anything against. And even though my cousin was saying that he didn't see my dad, I know for sure that he saw my dad and my dad didn't want to see me. And so that was hurtful for me because what I didn't understand is that how come people that victimize others will make them feel bad about standing up for themselves and wanting to be apologized to, but because they're so used to covering up their dirt, I still had to suffer the absentee of my father. And so I wasn't over it, like I said earlier, until God had me in that moment, that night, sitting in my bed, on my bed at my daughter's house, to choose that you're going to have to learn to live without the expectations and the hopes and the desires of wanting to have your dad in your life, and that it's okay to forgive him and to forgive your expectations and forgive yourself for sending you through that type of pain and hurt and, again, expectations to only in return to be denied of wanting and having something that you could not get.
Amen.
And so I had to get over it. And so I encourage those that are listening that it's okay to get over it. To be done with things that constantly hurts you, that things that constantly makes you feel like that you gotta beg and plead for the love of your family, the love of your mother, the love of your father. And it's okay, because everybody does not get to have their mother and father. And that's why I encourage those that have the chance and still got the chance to love on your parents, to appreciate them to the utmost, because some of us didn't get that in life.
And it goes too far beyond parents. Allow yourself to get over that ex that constantly did nothing but treat you as if you were nothing.
Amen.
Get over the friendships where you were more of a friend to the person than they were to you at any point of the friendship. You know what I mean? So it just goes far beyond that, whatever situation you find yourself in. You know what I mean? If you, as I stated earlier, if you got let go from a job, get over it. God has something better. You know what I mean? Waiting on you, you know, and we have to understand that, you know, even talking it back on the parent situation, you know, my biggest thing was I for 28, I just turned 28, but for 28 years, well, 27 years, I was attached, you know, to my father, you know what I mean? To the fact that I couldn't let it go that he was just not there, that he died when I was 2 months, you know what I mean? I was so attached to that thing.
He was killed.
Well, he was killed when I was 2 months, you know what I mean? And I was just so attached to that. And for years, I carried that with me, and everything that I found myself in, getting involved in, every relationship I found myself in, every friendship I found myself attached to, just every point in my life, because I was holding on to that, it was a reflection of what was going on the inside of me, because I was attached to something that I could not let go. I was attached to anger. I was attached, you know what I mean, to sadness and brokenness and pain. I was attached to all of that on the inside of me because here I am going through life mad that I never had a dad. You know what I mean? Until I made a vow to myself and God. When I turned 28, on the night that I turned 28, I literally, well, actually, I did it on the podcast when we were talking about it. I let it go in that moment, and I believe in my heart I really did, because where I'm at now, I feel like I am actually moving forward from this. You know what I mean?
And that's good.
And so the night that I actually turned 28,
Not the night, the morning that you turned 20.
well, yes, I prayed and I literally told God everything that I held on to up until this point in my life, I am letting go. I'm no longer allowing myself to be attached to it. I'm no longer allowing myself to make excuses for it. I'm no longer allowing myself to have expectations. You know what I mean? Like you said, we have to learn that there are just some things that we don't have the pleasure of having in life, and we have to learn to be okay with that. So the fact that my story includes me being a fatherless son, I'm at peace with that now. You know what I mean? Because why? I've learned that my Abba Father in heaven is my father. You know what I mean? I've learned that I have a father that loves me. You know what I mean? That shows it to me each and every day. You know what I mean? And that's Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Letting me know that I am special to him. You know what I mean? Fighting for me. You know, always calling me higher in life. And these are the things that a father does. Allows me to know at points in my life that he's proud of me. You know what I mean? This is what a father does. And so all this time, I was failing to realize that I already had a father. You know what I mean? I already had a dad that loved me. You know what I mean? Because, and I was just so caught up on the one that I didn't get to have, that I neglected, you know, seeing him, or I didn't allow myself to fully appreciate that. You know what I mean? Until now, but I'm glad I got it. And how did I get it? As you stated, by letting go, by getting over it. You know what I mean? And so, and going forward, and wherever you are in your life, even asking this question of, are you really over it? You may ask, how do I get over it? Allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to embrace it. You know what I mean? Allow yourself to understand that forwardness and God calling you forward means that there are greater things waiting ahead of you than there are, you know what I mean, right now in your present time, or right now in whatever it is that you're going through. Allow yourself to see beyond what has you stuck. And when you allow yourself to see beyond that, then you can begin to appreciate life. I wasn't able to, as I stated, to appreciate the fact that, why am I crying over a father that I didn't have when I have one, you know, that loves me, until I was able to get over that. And so, like I stated, now I'm in that place where I'm just like, yo, I just appreciate it so much more. And I'm truly thankful, you know what I mean, to God. And again, I'm even grateful for, as we stated on one of the podcasts, of all the men that along the way that God allowed to pour into my life. I'm grateful for that. But again, allow yourself the chance to grow. Allow yourself the chance to see beyond, and allow yourself the chance to rise above it.
And you also have to allow yourself to forgive.
Forgiveness
and
is
to
key.
forgive yourself for holding yourself back, for expecting things that you had no power to change, and accepting the things that God gives you power to change. And it's okay if you don't have the things that you feel that you're supposed to have or deserve. God said in his word, when your mother and your father have forsaken you, he will pick you up. He will take care of you. He will become everything that you need.
Amen.
And I thank God that I have found strength in knowing that God is everything I need and everything I don't have. And so I say, forgive and continue to love, even if it's from a distance. But don't allow yourself to be troubled by things that you cannot change, and things that you don't have power over. And so that's how I was able to come back home and be at peace and be thankful and grateful that, you know what, God, you are always leading me to my best and pushing me away from everything that will destroy me, keep me stuck and bound and chained and tied to misery. And so I am grateful that, and like I said, I will always love. My mother is dead and my father is still alive, but even in her death, I know I love her. And even though my father is still alive, I still love him. And I may never get to tell him that, and I may never get to talk to him or be in his presence ever again. But I thank God for everything that I've learned from my parents. And I thank God that even knowing my parents, it has literally taught me how to be a greater parent in my children's lives.
That you are.
And I thank the Lord. And I wouldn't have gotten to this place or this point in my life had I sat back and continued to judge and condemn and hate them for what they've sent me through. God would have allowed me to be exactly who they are, because that which you judge, that's who you become, and that's the test you will take. So I just want to say, as we close out, that you, at any moment, at any second, at any minute, at any time of the day, you can choose to get over it and make peace with everything that worked against you, and embrace everything with gladness, with gratitude, with joy, and with thanksgiving, everything that's working for your good.
I would say this last thing too. Along your journey and along your your journey of knowing where you are and your letting go and getting over, you may ask yourself, how do I truly know if I am over something? And one thing that I have learned in my life and in life in general is that God will allow certain situations to constantly come up to show us where we are in life and in our progression. And it's not, again, as I state, God is never against us. And him showing us this is not to discourage us, but it's to show us the truth that we fail to acknowledge at times. You know what I mean? So if you're asking yourself, am I really over this? You know what I mean? It's a feeling at the end. For me, I feel too, at the end of the day, it's a feeling. You can feel when you have grown past something. You know what I mean? You can feel when it's real.
Because it doesn't hurt
you
anymore.
Exactly.
And you can talk about it and have joy and peace in your heart. And it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
Because at one time, it hurt bad.
Right.
That I couldn't even talk about it without breaking down.
Right.
And crying my eyes out.
Right.
But that's how you know when you're healed. When somebody can bring it up, you don't have an attitude about it.
It don't move you.
You're not bitter about it. You're not angry about it. You're not hateful about it.
Right.
But that you are at peace and that you are happy and that you feel love.
Amen. Well, this has been another episode of The Naked Truth Uncut, and we are out.
I need a savior. I've been reaching, I've been searching for a savior. Someone to come save my soul. I need a savior. Sleepless nights, man, I've been yearning for a savior. Praying peace possess my soul. Cause I've been seeking and running, looking for you. It's your light in the darkness seeing me through. Said I've been seeking and running.